Okay, everyone, it's now 5 past the hour, so I think we will kick off with today's session. Thanks very much for making the time from wherever you are, whichever part of the world, whether you're at home on your couch or whether you're in the office. We're delighted to have you talking about today, Seminar 5, The Future Ready Lawyer. There'll be two speakers today, myself, Matt Glenn, and Simon Bryan. You can both see our video feeds. Just a reminder that we are recording this session so that you can download this and watch it again at your leisure, or for those that didn't make it to the session, they can catch up with it. So just bear that in mind if you have any questions as well. I'm going to start the session by providing some contextualized comments in terms of the future ready lawyer and where we see the industry at the moment, given there's a lot of changes that are occurring, some well and truly beyond our control. And then I'm going to hand over to Simon, who's going to take you through the majority of the presentation. From time to time, we might change speaking roles throughout the session, so hopefully there won't be any technical glitches as we do that. So without any further ado, let's get stuck into what is a brilliant topic and something we've been very, very excited about. Okay. Right. So again, the overview today is going to be covering part A, which is the new law skill set. Right. What are the skills that we think that the in-house community are going to need to thrive, not just survive in these challenging times? We're going to take the discussion from actual skill sets and to give you some visual conceptualizations as to what a new law legal department actually looks like. And noting that new skill sets are to be acquired, that's going to take a significant investment of time and in some cases resources on behalf of the business that support those teams. We're going to look at both training strategies, so how do we acquire those new skills? And we're also going to look at a very interesting topic because it's a significant issue. The amount of churn, right, or people leaving the in-house profession is starting all that.
Okay, tremendous. So just picking up where Matt left off. So essentially, we wanted to give some colour around not just what the new law skills we see as being necessary for the new law lawyer, but we also wanted to translate that into what a new law department would ultimately look like. In addition, we will see with the organisation of the new law department, the new law training strategies that the new law department will need to implement in order to not just make the best use of its existing resources, but also to retain that talent. One of the key features that we see in-house is that in-house is in growing numbers replicating the same levels of attrition that we see in private practice. We see more and more lawyers become frustrated with essentially the career paths put in front of them, and given the investment that everybody is making into their people, it obviously makes sense to retain them, which brings us on to the retention strategies. So moving forward, bear with me. There we go. So just to offer some context, the topic of this future ready lawyer session was actually scheduled back in 2019. We wanted to present, even back then, a consolidated view of a myriad of dynamics which are reshaping the in-house legal community. Now, at the time, and back then, almost a year ago, we considered that some of the dynamics were faster acting than others, but all of them certain. And that was that whilst the pressure that in-house lawyers in particular were under to transform and indeed transform the departments in which they were operating, we saw only the truly enlightened in-house counsel as being the ones that were acting at all, and certainly with any urgency, a bit like being stood on the train on the tracks, hearing the vibrations but doing nothing about it. I think it's fair to say that most in-house lawyers have recognised the case for change for some time, but again, rightly or wrongly, I think there was still a sense that there was still some time in which people had to act. We wanted to share the learning from those early responder clients, we called them, for those that actually were the first adopters of the new transformation strategies and those that did adapt and have emerged already as more potent legal teams. But then, of course, COVID happened, okay? Now, literally in the space of 6 months, we have now gone from where we were to an entirely new context, okay? And I think it's fair to say that certainly this last 2 or 3 month period has made it clear that the phase that we are now in, and recognizing everybody talking about new normals and the like, it is clear that the world is currently shut down. Some think that we are rebooting the global economy, a bit like a modem. Turn it off for 30 seconds, plug it back in, and it will restart from where it was before. But we don't think that that is what's happening at all. There is no more as it was before. The new norm, as we're hearing people refer to, is yet to emerge and will take some time to emerge. And when that power does come back on, we think a new program will be running. We think that how business is done is forever going to be changed. Swathes of previously valued job roles are now not needed. For example, we're also seeing that the requirement for people to be present in offices, that is removed. The location of talent is now not as important as it was before. The embracing of remote working practices and so on. The entire game has changed, okay? But there are no more incremental adjustments to these emerging trends. So today's session is very much now about focusing on these transformative skills that were ultimately to be required in the future, but now absolutely are required today. So just to reiterate, again, when we planned this session initially at the back end of last year, we were talking about the future ready lawyer. But the reality is what this session now speaks to is ultimately the ready now lawyer. It's those lawyers who are ultimately able to take their future in their own hands, recognizing the current economic conditions, and emerge ultimately as the more potent operator and that potent practitioner going forward. Now, at this point, we did just want to flag that the team has spent many, many months working on what we are calling the ultimate guide to legal operations. We believe that there is no other single source of truth out there in relation to this emerging discipline of legal operations. And like many things at GLS, we believe in empowering our clients with knowledge so ultimately they can do more for themselves. And it's no different in relation to the ultimate guide to legal operations. We will be providing that to download for free. And ultimately that will be available for download via our website. So we invite you all to be taking a copy of that. Moving on then into part A, where we now deal with an unpack of new law skills. So we've already discussed and analysed the drivers of change, and those drivers of change have accelerated. I think we can all acknowledge that the legal industry has been in dire need of change for some time, certainly since the global financial crisis and arguably from well before that. But what was clear is that the global financial crisis was a single event that really shone a light on what was and what is still in large parts an inefficient industry with, in many quarters, pathological resistance to change. Now, since the global financial crisis, we've had 12 years of arguably flat markets, increasing regulation, and it's fair to say that the role and the desk, if you like, of the in-house lawyer is increasingly large. But since the global financial crisis, let's ask ourselves how much has actually changed. The drive to new law and the requirement to develop new law skills as an in-house lawyer is ultimately being driven by an underlying business and client need. Now, in the last 12 years, that call for change has become deafening. And for those that know the GLS group, we've been banging this drum for change certainly since 2014. And for those that knew us in our lives before, both in-house and in private practice, from well before the time where we inaugurated the GLS group. Now, at GLS, we believe and still believe that all lawyers should be doing more to help their clients make better and more informed choices around the deployment of their existing and available resources to meet ever increasing support scenarios from their underlying client business. Now, again, until recently, that pace of change was slow, but changing attitudes within both lawyers and indeed our underlying clients has led to an increased pace of change, driven not only out of necessity, but also now increased awareness around the role that in-house lawyers can actually play in improving that overall organisational and operational efficiency and productivity. So what is the new in-house law reality? Well, we see it as no more complex than this. Businesses require more from their in-house legal teams than ever before, with less consumption of resource. But more than that, for legal support to be valued, and particularly from an in-house construct, it must be strategic and business enabling. Now, meeting this expectation and demonstrating, rather than merely stating our value, requires profound change in the way that in-house lawyers historically have thought, but also operate. Now, in relation to the in-house legal department, change had historically stopped at the door of the in-house department, but no more. The prevailing climate of in-house legal departments representing a support or a cost centre to businesses remains strong in many organisations. Lawyers are often considered dime a dozen amongst what we see as an increasingly cynical internal ecosystem that's not necessarily convinced of, or indeed remains sceptical about the true value that the in-house lawyer ultimately represents to the organisation. Now, this notion must be rebutted through greater data-driven contributions. Like every other corporate department, and we include in them the likes of HR, finance, procurement, compliance, all of these other support functions, transformation must now be embraced by the in-house legal department. Future-ready lawyers, or future-now lawyers, as we're calling them, are embracing innovation and embracing new methods of working to achieve more. And doing so will remove that existential threat faced by in-house lawyers, such as essentially, well, what is it that you actually do? Your contribution must be focused around those things that matters, but most importantly must be verifiable. So how does that then translate into the new law skills lockup? For those in the GLS orbit already, this slide is not going to come as any surprise. You will have seen it before and you will know that it's crucial, okay? It shows what we believe is the undeniable future of the in-house legal industry, okay? And it's the reason why the GLS group exists. The GLS group is the fulcrum on which in-house lawyers globally are leveraging their performance, okay? And at the center of this is the GLS Legal Operations Center. It works like this. You guys have only got so much time, budget, and available skill set within your resource pool, and yet you're required to support what is ultimately an infinite need. Now, I think it's fair to say that certainly in the current economic climate, and even before, you're not going to be getting any additional resources anytime soon. So how are you going to solve that problem? There is but one answer. You've got to transform, okay? You must leverage up every category of available support resource that you have in order to achieve an exponentially greater result. And that most important of all resource categories remains for us, the in-house lawyer, you. You need to rapidly acquire these new skills, most of which actually go beyond the role of the traditional lawyering. So let's start with you. What we see as being fundamental to the acquisition of a new law skill set is first the acquisition of a new law mindset. I think it was, I'm not sure who it was that coined the phrase, but it was certainly one of Matt's favourite sayings, that the saying of, so you think, so it will be. We need to be embracing a new mindset when we are approaching our daily task and our daily operations function. Now, whilst we're painting perhaps with a broad brush, I think many of us can acknowledge, and certainly for those of us that have spent any time in-house, we can acknowledge these old notions of old law in terms of, well, what is it you actually do? you represent the business with a custodian of risk, we keep business safe, and so on. But whilst all of these things are not incorrect, what they do not relate to is a translatable, tangible contribution. They can't be measured, okay? Historically as well, legal departments were seen, given this intangible contribution, as representing nothing more than business interruption units. They were the departments who said no. They were bottlenecks. They took time to review things and eventually frustrated the operation of the business in getting more sales, achieving more contracts, and so on and so on and so on. Now, moving towards new law, what we are now seeing is the requirement and the drive towards the legal department becoming that business enabling unit. Now, what does that mean? It means that we must take an efficiency and productivity focus, okay? We have to defend the principles of common sense to grow, protect, and still defend the business, albeit whilst offering a verifiable contribution to essentially enabling our underlying client business to be achieving more. Now, this message of GLS in terms of the translation of old to new is not just a message shared by us, but even increasingly vocational bodies like law societies of the United Kingdom, whose, you know, we can question whether their industry contribution is anything more than let's just say, representative of a view rather than actually encouraging behaviours to achieve the underlying principle. But quite a powerful quote that we saw recently from Catherine Dixon, who's the Chief Executive of the UK Law Society, and this was a quote she actually made in the GC 500, the GC 350, beg your pardon, which is a recent benchmarking survey of the top 350 company GCs in the UK, is that a GC is now not just a legal advisor. She or he is also a business advisor who drives innovation and shapes organisational risk culture. Now, we will now take a little bit more granular view as to what ultimately that means. So the big reveal. This is for us what we believe the new law skill set looks like. But note, it is likely to change. It's going to evolve as the needs and the requirements of our underlying businesses also evolve. Now, before we deep dive into the new law skills, just a word to the old law skills, the core skills, as it were. We still need them. Lawyers still need to be all of those good things in terms of strong technical ability, great community, great communicators, able to influence the crazy clients that we all like dealing with, and of course able to perform in a team environment. But this session is all about focusing on these new law skills, and we wanted to just unpack a few points in relation to this slide, just to start again bringing you along on that journey of actually unpacking what some of these things actually mean. We'll also focus on two of the key skills in terms of EQ and specialist generalist highlighted there, which we'll unpack in later slides. Now, just to pick on a few. So with this new law mindset, as we've understood we must embrace, some of these new law skills, process engineers, okay? We need to be working on the basis as lawyers that everything that can be automated should be automated. We must become process engineers about how our business operates and how we enable our business to operate. Working on an if this then that principle, then it means that we can remove a lot of the day-to-day grind associated with our business as usual activity to allow us to focus on the more strategic things. We need to become analysts. Now, we need to form a relationship with legal department data and use it to make informed decision-making and be able to validate the results. What are we spending our time, money, and resources on? And how is that time and money resonated into support gains for our underlying business, okay? Is it better to spend money on insourcing some legal process outsourcing, if that makes sense, i.e. allowing alternative legal services providers like GLS to be taking care of more of that business as usual, to allow the in-house specialists to be more focused on those strategic projects which are ultimately going to take your business forward? Maybe. We also need to become value farmers. Now, if we are and where we are committing resources to a task, we need to be able to capture that value and farm it out so it can be reused. For example, if we're taking into account a new deal type, maybe we should extract a checklist from that deal, so the next time one of our colleagues or indeed ourselves come across it, we have a better starting point and footprints in the sand to follow, and so on. Technology, one of the favourite buzzwords at the moment. Now, legal technology and becoming a technologist is not about us all learning machine code, to the contrary. But what we do need to be doing is we need to be building as lawyers a technical capability so that we can recognise the technologies that are ultimately going to be able to help us leverage up and achieve more with our limited resources. We cannot any longer be the ones that are ignoring the technology and the technology available to our business. Now, compromises, and this is a big one. Our resources are limited, and this is probably one of the most fundamental, biggest changes that I needed to get my head around in the move from in-house, private practice, in-house, okay? We as in-house lawyers cannot do everything. We are never going to get to the bottom of our inbox, so we need to stop trying to, okay? We must insist on prioritised resourcing decisions, okay? We need to focus on those activities that are going to deliver the maximum support gains and those which can be validated as delivering results to our business. Time managers. Now, again, not about creating timesheets and being able to report hours in a day. To the contrary, this is about the strategic contribution that we must be making to the transformation of our overall department, and indeed to ensure that the time that we're spending on things is the most validly represented activity resonating in support gains for our business. We believe that in-house lawyers should be spending, like other parts of our business, around 15% of their time on strategic business, on transformation activities, working out essentially what we can break and rebuild so we can deliver better, faster, cheaper within the confines of our own legal department. Now, for each of the skills that you see here, and I've unpacked a number of them, we don't have time to unpack them all, but you will see that each of these skills is linked by effectively two common threads. One, they enable you to better leverage the limited resources that you have available, including your own time. Secondly, they are founded on the basis of you being able to help validate your own performance and that of your department. Now, I promised a quick deep dive into two of the skills flagged, and that is the EQ and the specialist generalist, two key areas we're seeing more often being flagged more often by other operators in the legal operations space. Now, specialist generalist, this is an interesting one. Historically, private practice, and indeed some of those in-house, used to trumpet their own specialisms and disparage those that were, let's just say, more able to deal with a more generalist approach to their business. But we think they've missed the point. In-house lawyers need to become increasingly specialist generalists. And actually, going back to that GC 350 benchmark report, it was actually quoted by GCs in that report as being one of the most important new law skills that they wish to see lawyers acquiring. Now, this is not about being a jack of all trades and master of none, to the contrary. It's about being able to do the job to the highest standards, but with an ability to see the bigger picture and offer an understanding of the wider context to ensure that the underlying business and client receives a holistic view of the best way forward. In-house lawyers cannot, and indeed for many years have not been able to operate like private practice lawyers. You do not sit in silos or have the luxury of being able to focus on one specific flavour of work. And we draw the analogy a bit like the chefs, as it were, in the kitchens of McDonald's. Now, within the McDonald's restaurant, you will have somebody effectively focused just on cooking the fries or warming the buns or so on. Okay. Now, you don't have that luxury. In-house counsels must be chefs, which mean they have the ability to man every station in the kitchen. Okay. Your game is a multi-dimensional one. You don't work at Mac Law. You work in a multi-dimensional kitchen where you need to be able to cover multiple areas of specialism, multiple areas of focus, and ultimately be able to oversee the entire operation of universe that you represent. Now, moving on to EQ, and again, we're seeing more and more commentary around this, specifically referring to our profession. Private practice historically, again, must throw caveats and assumptions at everything in order to cover their PI policy. But that means their sense of EQ in terms of knowing what to deliver when and know what to say when and being able to qualify things accordingly hasn't necessarily been able to develop as much as it has in other areas of the business. Now, in-house lawyers exist in a world where, let's be frank, being right all of the time isn't as useful as being right at the right time. Sometimes winning the hearts and minds of those in the room, and indeed being able to take your business on a journey that they don't necessarily want to go on, is more important than simply being right. Because good advice is correct advice followed. And one thing that we also wanted to add here is the importance of learning how and indeed when to say no, or more importantly, being able to challenge constructively your underlying business in a way that it will not only accept but welcome. We are now living in the age where we must be asking ourselves not just how we do things, but why we do things. And therefore creating this constructive, almost conflict scenario where we are able to be self-analyzing those underlying processes with our business, okay, which may result in we need to change the way we do things, or there is a better way. But the lawyer who is able to take that business on the journey, learning the art of diplomacy, letting other people have what ultimately you want, being able to read a room and decide when best to deliver a message and so on, those are the lawyers that ultimately are going to achieve a better outcome, but also a more sustainable future. Now, the final thing that we really wanted to focus on, and you've heard us speak about this, and again, I refer back to the GLS Ultimate Guide to Legal Operation, which is now available to all of you, is a real focus on the new law skill of legal operations. Now, we've acknowledged all in-house teams are busy, but working hard no longer cuts it, okay? And we can all acknowledge that there's no more hours in the day. Now, legal operations is the management science of better arranging your resources to exponentially increase productivity outcomes. It's a way of thinking, okay? It's about demanding maximum efficiency from your resources and forming new relationships with the data that your team generates in order to validate the outcomes and consistently improve the performance that you're delivering. It's about getting everything into the right position and role and optimizing performance, including your own. Now, the analogy that we often use in this case, and certainly as being an overwhelming case for legal operations, is that Formula One race teams do not ask their drivers, by the way, who, a bit like the in-house lawyer, represent their most expensive team members, they're not asked to clean the car, check the tyres, turn the engine, tune the engine and transport the car to the next race and so on. Instead, the F1 team has the drivers focused on their primary responsibilities, which is driving the car as fast and safely as possible, avoiding accidents, turning in fast lap times, securing pole positions, and ultimately winning the championship. But unlike F1 teams, in-house legal departments are too often bogged down by those tasks which actually prevent them and get in the way of those in-house lawyers of performing in the areas where they're needed most and indeed perform the best. Legal operations is the discipline of enabling each category of legal resource perform better. And that is everything from lawyers staying focused on the lawyering, external providers delivering more value, and indeed you being able to utilize data-informed decisions. Now, again, we have just published the Ultimate Guide to Legal Operations. It is a first of its kind book that helps you implement and indeed encompass the entire landscape of the legal operations universe. And we would encourage you to take a copy of that, and it will certainly keep you occupied over a few mornings' coffees. Now, this is where I was actually going to hand back to Matt to unpack on the new law department. Nick, if you're still with me, has Matt been able to rejoin?
Only as a guest, but
No problem.
not as a host.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'll canter forward into the new law department, and here we offer a blueprint. And guess what? You've seen this slide before, and we refer back to what we've already shown you. Now, this is what the journey looks like at 30,000 feet. Okay, but now we will drop down a little in altitude to show you what the journey looks like from the ground. And here it is. Now, forgive me if that doesn't render perfectly on your screen. There's a lot of information on it. But what this represents is, again, what we believe is transformative thinking into a linear view of how a new law in-house legal department looks like, functions, operates, but interrelates to all of the critical in-house functions and processes, okay? And it shows the juncture points. We call it the GLS Legal Transformation Tube Map. Now, a copy of this is available in the Legal Operations Guide, okay? But what this does specifically is to outline those 15 critical functions that make up most in-house lawyers. It offers you the ability to audit each function, okay, to understand what you have, what you do not have, where things are performing and where things are not, but also gives you a linear guide as to how to transform, but optimize the performance of each of these linear critical functions, but also show where the dependencies lie, okay, where you're able to leverage investment in one area that may resonate in other areas, okay. As you adopt and understand this transformation tube map and translate this to your business, essentially your own department transformation blueprint can emerge. And obviously underpinning that, then you're able to identify those new law skill areas where ultimately you feel that maybe yourself or indeed that your own team will benefit from. But a key message here, okay? You cannot do everything all at once. And again, for those that have joined us in previous sessions, you will hear us again bang the drum about the RPLV view of the world in order about focusing on those quick wins and focusing on that which ultimately is going to deliver the greatest resonance in the first instance. So moving forward, again, just in terms of, we thought we'd outline some steps about how to develop your department blueprint by reference to the GLS Legal Transformation Map. And essentially it's a step process. Again, have a look at the existing features that already exist in your in-house department, okay? Inform yourselves of the possibilities to what's available, okay? That which is available to your team, that which is available internally, externally, and how that may translate to your business. But also encourage data to be given from around you, okay? Take a look as to how you compare with others in your space of comparable size in a similar territory in the marketplace. And again, that's something that we routinely help our clients with, those kind of benchmarking surveys and analysis. Then it's essentially, and again, a nod to the RPLV decision making. Understand those areas which ultimately are going to have the greatest resonance in your business and focus on those. Focus on those quick wins and being able to identify, but importantly, verify those wins. So essentially, you're building your own investment case for continued investment in your department and indeed your own transformation going forward. Pilot your way to success, an important one. Baby steps, okay? We always advocate that there is no big bang theory to transformation, okay? And being able to offer, again, a verifiable and verified footprints to an overall transformation journey is a much more surefire way of delivering successful projects rather than projects which either just don't get off the ground or invariably fail. Optimize through data analytics. We flagged the need to be operating by reference to empirical data, okay? Your business is now going to be asking you more than before to demonstrate performance and demonstrate what that performance means for the overall business, okay? We need to embrace that. So consider where that data may come from, what that data may look like, and indeed what that data may prove for you. And then change management. Core and central to any transformation is the ability to effectively bring your business and your people along to you. People are ultimately the biggest protagonist, if you like, of change. And as human beings, we tend to resist change violently. So it's very important that you adopt a change management approach to any kind of transformation or indeed new law skill set acquisition. Bring people along for that journey. And as a final slide on the new law, what the new law department looks like, we've offered again a visualization of the inputs, as it were, into this overall department blueprint. And we call it, if you like, the four-legged stool. Okay, there needs to be a focus on technology. Okay, we often see technology referred to as being that of the automation, the AI, data analytics, and so on. Okay, service delivery, globalization, right sourcing is an interesting one. Okay, we are seeing more and more businesses essentially being denied the ability to insource external support. For us, that is the wrong outcome, which ultimately we suspect will be addressed in due course. Having people who are better equipped and more enabled to take care of business as usual activity on a more efficient basis is a good thing for your team. It means you can free yourself up to be more strategic. People we've discussed, and we'll continue on that theme, and we've discussed legal operations. Now, cantering on and conscious of the time, we wanted to then speak to new law training strategies. We've already outlined that for us, the in-house lawyer represents one of, if not the most valuable resource that any in-house function has. Okay, you guys remain as the fulcrum of that which ultimately you and your department can offer, and the capability of your organisation. Now, we wanted to dispel a myth early on here. We keep hearing talk, and we're frequently hearing about this notion that robots are going to replace us. Well, forget it. It's not going to happen. Okay, the in-house lawyer is and will always remain essential to the in-house operation, provided, however, that the in-house lawyer is embracing and operating and working to a new law mindset and new law skill set. The legal practitioner, together with a myriad of new law tools and technologies, together combine what we believe is the combined intelligence approach, which will ultimately yield the greatest support construct for our business. Lawyer tools without lawyers are nothing but expensive yet redundant assets. Okay, that AI tool. If the AI tool has not had fed into it the metrics about how the underlying business wishes to operate and the decision points around what it can and can't accept, then ultimately the AI tool is nothing more than effectively a Control X search function. So the message is emphatic. We must develop our most critical assets, and those critical assets are our people. Now, we wanted to offer 5 key principles around training agenda fundamentals, recognizing, and I say with a smile on my face, I think many of us can acknowledge that a lot of external training available, or certainly that training that's been available historically, has not necessarily always been as useful as we might like, and essentially it might not have the impact desired. Often we see people borrowing speakers that are ill prepared, that they're pulling things out last minute, and things are being sewn up and passed off as a well thought out curriculum. In addition, we're seeing that an increasing number of clients are actually being denied any external training budget at all. Okay, now, so the importance of being able to develop your own training agenda has never been greater. So we wanted to offer 5 key principles around those things where we thought, essentially a good start. So the first principle, master the things that matter. Now, this is referencing about focusing on the things that ultimately are most relevant and important to you. Every business is different, okay? And every business's people are different, the in-house lawyers that you have. So it's about focusing on those things that are going to move the needle for you, okay? As opposed to just taking a broad brush approach. The second principle around practice beats theory is this notion of training on the job and with the people who you'll be working with. Okay, academic and theoretical training is no substitute for the ability to ultimately know what works in practice. Okay, emphatic message there, and that leads on to the third principle of being self-taught is best. Most lawyers have the ability to effectively learn new skills and learn new abilities pretty quickly. Okay, it's what makes us lawyers. But recognise and embrace the fact that those lessons learned directly are sometimes the best lessons. Okay, think about how we learnt as children. Now, the fourth principle is let the needs of your business ultimately dictate your development areas. Again, it's no good trying to force an agenda upon a business that ultimately is not able to understand, endorse, or indeed champion that same cause. I go back to that principle of the change management. Everybody needs to be along for the journey, and everybody needs to be on an aligned pathway about ultimately what success looks like. And the final principle about being resourceful, again, is recognizing that fact. Okay, in these times, and indeed arguably before, we must learn how to effectively beg, borrow, and steal. But look outside the confines of where you might think you might normally look. Look within your own organisation. Look amongst your peers and contemporaries. The reality is that other departments in your organisation have gone through similar transformation journeys. Everybody is now operating in a world of empirical data and performance-driven culture. So look at the initiatives that other departments have successfully deployed and see where you can effectively borrow and leverage them. And of course, I suspect it would be remiss of me at that time to say also, don't be afraid to look towards providers such as GLS. We have, obviously a range of training agendas and indeed programs on accessible basis to help you achieve all of this. Now, putting into place the principles of applying and creating a training agenda, that leads us to essentially, as what we see going forward, are the four key fundamental pillars of ultimately your training and knowledge management strategy. Now, again, rather than unpack these silos, as it were, or these pillars rather, and we don't like the word silo at GLS, these pillars, essentially, this is a principle-based slide. You can obviously unpack this at your leisure. It's in the slide pack that you can download. But the key message here is that each one of these pillars is organised around essentially what is an RPLV methodology. All right. Now, moving on to new law outcomes. Again, we have analysed what it means to be a new law lawyer. And again, how we equip ourselves and enable ourselves to become that new law lawyer. Now, this is the segue where effectively there's almost the, well, what's in it for the department, but what's in it for us, okay? Getting it right as a department is key, but getting it right for our individual lawyers, both ourselves, but also our team member is critical. Yes, of course, embracing a new law mindset, a new law skill set, having a legal operations agenda focus is going to see performance skyrocketing. But what does that ultimately mean for the personal experience of our lawyers? Recognising that the in-house team and the in-house lawyers represented within it comprise our most valuable assets, we need to be keeping our people happy. Happy lawyers are motivated lawyers are well-performing lawyers, and well-performing lawyers are those that ultimately stick around and stay with us. Getting it right for our people is critical, okay? And we just therefore wanted to take a little bit of time in unpacking and understanding what essentially this meant for the in-house lawyer. Okay, we believe that if each in-house lawyer is embracing that new law mindset and indeed the new law skill set, then we're going to see those lawyers experiencing much greater value recognition. They're going to receive much greater market value. Imagine as an in-house lawyer where you're able to go to a new employer and demonstrate the fact that you were able to increase revenue by X, or you were able to reduce spend by Y, or you were able to reduce contract closure time by Z, and so on and so on and so on. We think that we're going to see greater role diversity, but also it speaks to the inherent ability of the lawyer to fix things. We're fixers, that's what we do, we're lawyers, and we like fixing things. And that new law skill set is going to enable you and equip you better than ever before to be able to get into your business and effectively make a difference. Now, that brings us on the segue to wasted resources, because in the absence of essentially getting it right, what we are seeing is the attrition, as it were. And I spoke at the start of the session around the attrition rates that we're seeing in-house. Now, it's almost a stark data point that we are seeing lawyers leaving the legal profession in record numbers, and that includes in-house lawyers. In-house lawyer, they're no longer meaningfully different. It's no longer a meaningly differentiated alternative to private practice. Okay, you know, the notion of, oh well, you know, I'll go in-house for a quiet life, or I'll go in-house for you know, to work less and so on. It's not right. We're seeing in-house lawyers being choked by increasing amounts of grind. They're not being able to make a difference. Again, a nod to the previous slide. They're not being valued by their client or underlying business. They're not developing professionally. They're not necessarily particularly proud of what they're being able to achieve. And also just a general kind of lack of direction in terms of where they ultimately see their role, their function, or indeed the profession headed. And there's no end in sight. But this for us underpins, and it's an emphatic reminder as to why a key part of that new law department is focusing on that new law skill set acquisition, the training of the lawyers, which ultimately leads on to better retention strategies. Coming on to those retention strategies and appreciating we're cantering through, albeit recognising the time. Once again, the endorsement, and this slide represents what is ultimately just one of the lines in that legal department tube map that we saw. We call this the human capital line. Now, we recognise that human capital is the top resource category, and essentially having invested in a valuable resource, not investing in strategies to retain that capital means that you are ultimately allowing value to walk out the door. Now, again, applying the RPLV principle, why invest in your people if ultimately you're not going to leverage them to achieve the maximum support gains for your underlying business? Now, the human capital line is but one of 15 of the critical in-house functions, but really importantly is that this human capital line inevitably impacts all of the other 14 critical in-house functions. And again, this is where you see that translatability, where the lawyer is not going to be replaced. Okay, a legal department without lawyers is not a legal department, and it's not going to be able to function as such. Okay, so looking on to driving then those the essential drivers in relation to implementing retention strategies. I'll offer a kind of a broad view summary here before translating this into the in-house context. When Matt and I were many years ago back in private practice in big law, there was a report commissioned where essentially a big law firm went out to employ professionals to say, how can we keep our people motivated and how do we stop our lawyers leaving? And the report that came back was that essentially lawyers require a staple diet of good work and a periodic pat on the back. In other words, they require recognition and value. Now, whilst somewhat dated, that report does offer some light on the drivers and dynamics of those kind of type A personalities that represent lawyers and what ultimately is required in order to keep these people motivated and ultimately on the straight and narrow in terms of them running out the door. Now, for a more comprehensive strategy formation, we would refer you back to that HR line in the legal operations guide, which shows you how you can deliver on the promise of maintaining that diet of good work with less grind. It shows where those different interfaces are with the other parts of your business and shows you on areas where you can focus on ultimately improving that diet of quality work, removing the grind, so to speak, creating better chance for your lawyers to have more meaningful and more verifiable contributions to your underlying business. It also outlines areas where your lawyers can be supported with tools and resources, again, to enable them to achieve a better, faster and cheaper outcome whilst ultimately reducing the pressure on them. Again, allowing them to perform the miracles of loaves and fishes. Okay. Just as a final point in relation to that is obviously a key part of being a new law leader, so to speak, is the ability to protect and retain your talent. So the next slide speaks to, again, some specific strategies, which again will allow you to unpack in your own time, given the time, which ultimately focus on 5 key areas which you can implement into your own workforce with a view to, again, offering better outcomes and, more importantly, better retention ratios. This essentially refers back to the Legal Operations Guide again, which, once again, you were able to download after this session. So, about on time and bringing this seminar to a conclusion, we just wanted to offer you the following overviews. And again, some of this is nothing that you've not heard before, particularly for those of you that have been kind enough to join us in previous sessions and give your time there. But the case for change is deafening. I think we will continue to bang that drum, but it's a drum that you will continue to hear to be big. But actual change that's been achieved thus far is limited. But now the case for change is no more a decision, it's a requirement, okay? But this represents what we see as being a survival and thrive opportunity. Again, contrary to popular myths, at GLS, we believe there's never been a better time to be a lawyer. And particularly, we see that there's never been a better time for those in-house to be really taking control of their own futures, their own destiny, but also the role that they can perform in developing their role in being able to be more of an aligned advisor to their business. But that does require new skills. We've given you an unpack of those new skills, and there's an outline of where and how you might want to acquire those skills and indeed be able to upskill your department in relation to those. We've offered you the insight in relation to the new department structure, what that might look like, and indeed we've even gone further and offered you, as it were, the tube map, the linear blueprint, as it were, of what an ultimately optimally functioning legal department looks like. But the key message is this: we must transform. There's a journey ahead of us, but it's a good journey to be on, and it's a journey that we all embrace. But it's a journey that at the end of, I think we will see a far more rewarding future, a far more sustainable future, and ultimately a far more meaningful future, not just for us, but also to those client organisations that we ultimately represent. You've heard me say it, the Ultimate Guide to Legal Operations is available now. Nick, that is right, it's available now, correct?
Absolutely, it's live on the site now.
Tremendous. It includes that GLS Legal Operations tube map, as we've discussed, and it includes chapters dedicated to the in-house knowledge and team management. Of course, by all means, do visit the GLS Legal Operations Centre. There are tools and solutions that speak to everything that we've discussed today, be it from complete transformation strategy, soup to nuts, down to individual training components, or indeed helping you develop department blueprints, be it for transformation training and so on. And then on to the next session. Well, first of all, this seminar will be available. Normally it takes a little bit of time to get that online and make sure it's in a good format to download, but you'll be able to download that. And then the next seminar, seminar 6, which is around demystifying this whole area of legal tech and importantly embracing it safely, a real pet area for us as former tech lawyers. But again, it will deal with those things that we flagged there on the slide. So
can I just jump in very quickly on a final bit of admin? Following the webinar, we'll be circulating the slide deck from the webinar, which will include a link to a video of the webinar in case you have any colleagues who want to re-watch it. But also, as we circulate those resources, we'll be circulating a link to the Ultimate Guide of Legal Operations so that everyone can just explore it at their leisure.
Thank you. That's appreciated. Thanks, Nick. And without further ado, just as a final note, just to say thank you again for your time. We couldn't do what we do without the support of our clients, and certainly these seminars and the session that we're able to offer wouldn't be so valuable without the support and the feedback and the time that our clients are so gracious in which they're willing to give us. So thanks again to you all, wherever you are in the world, in these very unusual and unprecedented times. We hope that you stay safe and well. And for those in the Middle East, on a Thursday, we wish you a super weekend ahead. Thank you again. We will now end the session.